Hello everyone, my name is Eric Jones, better known as the Turf Teacher. Welcome to the course entitled Hardscape Calculations. This is a course that I put together that will earn you 1 CEU for your North Carolina Landscape Contractors Licensing Board licensing renewal for the license that expires July 31st of 2019. This course, guys, hopefully is a review. If you are definitely a landscape contractor doing landscape installation, I'm sure that you've had to do retaining walls or some type of patio construction. If you haven't, then it's an introductory course, and that is A-OK. Guys, I love hardscapes. It's hard work. There are very few true hardscape companies out there that's all they do. Usually this is a add-on service that you probably have for your existing clients and advertise for new construction, and that's okay. But I think there is a need. If there was somebody that really wanted to specialize in hardscapes, the work is unlimited. I know a lot of general contractors also do the retaining walls, and they may be some competition for us, but that is okay as well. So in the meantime, let's go ahead and get started with hardscape calculations. Guys, I do want to inform you that at the end of this lecture, there is a quiz that is going to consist of several questions. You will actually see the questions on the slides as well before you enter the quiz and answer them there. And these questions are going to be on a hardscape plan that I drew. I hand drew it, actually hand rendered it with colored pencils, and put a picture of that on there for you as well. But we're going to discuss the plan. I'm going to show you where the retaining wall is. That's probably the only thing that may be a little issue with you there. We are actually going to figure the retaining wall without caps. We are going to just a straight modular block wall. And we are going to then calculate a brick paver patio and then a patio just of concrete. And so some fun math. Hopefully you've taken my landscape pesticide calculations course, and now we will do some hardscape calculations. Guys, I absolutely love math. I love the landscape math problems that we face each and every day, and that's what makes the world go round is math. And hopefully that got you to laugh. But let's go ahead and look at our objectives before we get started in the course. In our objectives, landscape contractors will identify paver installation techniques and materials. Now, before we move on to objective 2, with the paver installation techniques, I'm asking you guys this out of personal curiosity, I guess. When you are to lay a brick paver patio, do you guys prefer doing it on a gravel and sand base, or had you prefer to lay them on a concrete base? Now, me personally, I would much rather do the concrete base. For one, it speeds up our process. We can hire our concrete company that will come in and excavate for us. They will, form it up. They will pour it usually in the same day, depending on what size the patio is, but they can pour it that afternoon, finish it up. Well, guess what? The next morning, we're throwing a little bitty sand on top of it, and we're laying brick. We're still not trying to bring in rock and sand and compact it. We're actually on the ball laying brick, so we get done faster. We have it done quicker. That frees up our money. We get paid quicker. It's just an all-around better process for us. So think about that. I don't know how you guys do it. I'd love to talk to you whenever you have some time to discuss that. Well, objective 2, landscape contractors will identify retaining wall installation techniques and materials. Now, retaining walls are tough. They are hard jobs. I have seen some horror stories. We actually had a small horror story ourselves where we had one that fell. We did not put enough geogrid in it, and we paid for it. Luckily, it was not such a big wall, but we did have a 200-year floodplain storm come, and that's actually what wiped it out when that happened. But Guys, when you are doing retaining walls for residential customers and they live in a neighborhood, make sure that you check their restrictive covenants or their bylaws, because they may or may not let the use of certain building materials in the neighborhood. We actually had to build a retaining wall here in Winston-Salem. I think at the highest point it was either 16 or 18 feet. The individual must have bought the absolute last lot in the neighborhood, because if there were other lots, I'm sure he would have went and purchased it. But it was on a cliffside, and he had a young child who wanted to have a swing set. But literally, if you stepped out the back door, you fell down a ravine. And so what we did is we built a landscape timber wall, because the neighborhood in their restricted covenants said absolutely no block walls. So we did it out of landscape timbers. Brought in, I don't know how many tractor and trailer loads of dirt, got it in the wall, and actually put sod on top of it, and he had a nice flat backyard for his daughter's swing set. That was actually a pretty interesting wall. Our third objective, landscape contractors will do a simple takeoff of the hardscape plan that we will discuss here at the very end. It is a plan that I drew by hand, rendered it by hand, so you can actually see some color in the landscape if that is one of your things. I love to color with colored pencils. I love using chart pack markers. One of my favorite things to do now is actually colored pencil on sketch paper, or what we call trash paper, and then outline it with a Sharpie. I love doing it on packaging paper, brown packaging paper, colored pencils. So guys, there's all kinds of cool ways to render landscape plans. And what we're going to do, we're going to see the questions on the very end of this slideshow. There are going to be 2 slides of it. There's going to be questions where you're going to figure the retaining wall. We'll figure the retaining wall without the cap, just to make it easier and simpler. And then we're going to figure brick pavers, and then we're going to figure a concrete patio as well. And we're going to do that, and that is actually going to be the quiz for this lecture. You know, I always have a quiz. The board requires it as their online roster. And so the plan you will need to print out. You can print it out in a PDF. It is on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, so a regular piece of paper. The scale is 1/4 inch. And you're going to print it out, and you're going to need to find your quarter scale if you have one. If not, quarter scale means you can pretty much use a ruler. You can use a tape measure. I've never seen my dad use a scale to do a takeoff in my life. He's always pulled out his tape measure. And when I first got out of landscape architecture school, I'm like, Dad, hey, here's a scale. Won't you figure this plan this one? I don't need no scale, son. I got my tape measure here. He says, dang, the thing's 1/4 inch equals a foot. He said, man, that means there's 4 foot and an inch. That's all I need. I can figure this plan without that. Put your scale back up. But thought that was pretty cool. But I still love using my scales. Fourth objective. Now, this fourth objective, as well as the fifth objective, is objectives that we do in the face-to-face seminars. I do the Turf Talk live. Guys, I usually do it about 10 times a year, so you guys could get your CEUs. That way you earn all 7 in one day. But we will do objective 4. We will review the calculations that I've come up with for this project. I'm not going to give you those answers here. I'm going to actually make you figure them here and then answer the questions in the Moodle quiz. And you've got to get that 70% or above so you can print out that NCLCLB proof of attendance. And then last but not least, in the face-to-face seminars, we would complete an estimate for these hardscapes and the plant materials that are on the plan. It's good doing these types of activities in the face-to-face class, because I know a lot of the questions you guys have for me is on pricing and things of that nature. And, you know, we talk a lot about that on Turf Talk Tuesday when we go live on Instagram at 8 o'clock every Tuesday night. We answer questions of things of that nature. So, but objectives 4 and 5 are mainly for the face-to-face class. But just remember, you will see the same plan. You can print it out. You can use your tape measure like my father, or you can get out your 1/4 inch equals a foot scale. And so let's go ahead and get started with the PowerPoint slides. Now, regardless of the type of wall material selected, site preparation is very, very similar. You've got to prepare the base. Guys, I have seen so many landscapers. They're definitely not landscape contractors. They're definitely not general contractors, but I've seen them just scrape off a little bit of the grass and they start laying block. They do not do it. They do not correctly know how to do it. I don't understand it. You know, when you buy the blocks from the manufacturer, they're going to give you some specifications on it. They're going to tell you the specs on how to do it. But I never see it done. I see it correctly done all the time by individuals like us, but I see so many guys out there that don't know what they're doing, and they don't know. And this second thing really blows their mind. I got to put pipe behind the wall, but that don't make sense. How's the water going to get down there? Well, you got to put gravel behind the wall too. That allows for the water to fall down and get into the pipe and get out from behind it. And if you leave some weep holes or you leave some cracks in the wall, you're going to see water come out. But I've seen guys with walls over 4 feet not putting pipe behind the wall. I've seen them not putting gravel behind the wall. What are they doing? What are they doing? And so it blows my mind that there are individuals out there that are doing this every single day. But plan for wall stabilization, guys, and a big part of that is getting the drainage out from behind it. We've seen the horror stories. I taught a class the first weekend in March this year, and actually that was last weekend. So I don't know actually when you're watching this video. But March 2nd, I did a class down in Concord, and we were talking about walls in this class. And a lot of the individuals were talking about a wall that had just failed. It must have been in the Charlotte area. It was a Target parking lot. I wish I'd got more information about that so I could have told you guys about it. But, guys, I've seen 2 major walls fall here in Winston other than ours. Ours was a little one. And, guys, I'll be the first to tell you, when we make a mistake, I will tell you. Hopefully that I'm a role model for you. I want to be the role model landscaper, but I also want to be your failure model. I am the first to tell anybody when I've made a mistake because I don't want you to make the same mistake. That all goes back to helping each other out. We're colleagues. We're not competitors. And so if something failed with us, I'm going to definitely let you know. And if something works for us where we've figured out a problem, I'm going to let you know. I like sharing the information. But we've seen 2 major walls fall here in Winston-Salem. The first one that I saw was over at Haynes Mall Boulevard. It was holding up a parking lot, and I believe it was the Costco. There's that wall kind of goes across Haynes Mall Boulevard there for a pretty good while. But it was a section of it that had fell out, and then the roadway and parking lot kind of caved in when that wall had collapsed. And then the second one was on Renolda Road. There used to be a Hardee's there on Renolda, but was sold, torn down, and an Eckerd's was built. And when it was still Eckerd's before Rite Aid came in and bought them out, it was just a few weeks after the store had opened that they had probably a 30-plus foot wall behind it. They had to build a bigger building. They had to have the drive-through and everything for the drugstore. And they had one of these major monsoon storms come, and the whole thing collapsed. It was a horrible mess, but I'm sure you guys have seen it. We're going to continue to see it with the types of people out there that are installing these walls. But the solution to it, guys, is to get an engineer. You have to have an engineer. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. When it gets over 4 feet in the state of North Carolina, you got to have it engineered anyway. So, have an engineer that you can call and actually help you out with these situations. Selection of wall materials. There are variables to consider. The material performance, for one, and the stability. I keep thinking about these cross ties that my father installed back in the 70s and 80s that 20 years later we went back and replaced with the regular landscape timbers, or most of the homeowners elected to go with the modular block wall. So my dad has actually been on some projects twice Homeowners wanted the cross ties. They didn't really know what they were going to do. But 20 to 25 years later, they had rotted out and have actually just deteriorated so much that we had to go back and do something else. So it was pretty cool that he's been on some of the jobs twice and been paid twice for doing it. And I still like the cross tie. I like the look. I'm not saying I would ever want to install one or if I ever would, but I like the look. I like that dark, chocolatey, earthy looking wood versus these yellow pine looking landscape timbers, and definitely the modular block walls. But what is the cost? Which is cheaper? Which is easier to handle? I love handling the blocks more so than I do these 6x6 timbers that are 8 feet long. They're just a little bit harder to handle. That would be your ease of installation. But what is the cost? What does your homeowner have? What do they have to budget it? Because a lot of times, guys, retaining walls are a necessity. They're not a they're not something that we're going to do just on a whim. We're having to build a retaining wall because we need the retaining wall. And then the appearance, again, like I said, I like the cross tie look better. Ease of installation is the block walls. These cross ties were a pain when, Dad was putting them in. You had to cut them with chainsaws. Then there was all these nails in them. It was just a pain. And the durability. Guys, we know when we put the modular block walls in, it's going to be there forever. And I'm still thinking that some of these landscape timbers are going to start to rot out and actually give way. I see some on campus that are rotting out, and the guys are having to go back and replace small sections. So again, that's something that people are going to have to deal with later down the road when they do the landscape timbers. The wood railroad ties, again, I like them. They were often the least expensive wall material, but they are very limited on where you can get them. The dark brown color blended well with the naturalistic design themes. The workability was very difficult. The weight, inconsistent sizes. You had to trim it with the chainsaw. And the creosote got all nasty and could really be a nuisance to you. And the wood hardness and the buried nails was a big thing with those guys. But again, aesthetically, I don't think we can beat them. They are absolutely gorgeous on the newer walls done years ago. Landscape timbers, they're more costly. They're manufactured to consistent dimensions and leaks, either 6x6 or 8x8, and they're usually 6 to 8 feet long with the square edges. Don't confuse them with the round ones that you can buy at the big box stores. Those are just actually what you would call edging or going around shrub beds. But, the picture here is of the actual landscape timbers, and those look to be like a 6x6. And you have to do the dead men, is that where the wall ends. You're running those dead men back into the embankment and just down through the middle. You can probably see some of the ends of the walls where they are used as dead men going back into the embankment. And that's, it can be a little hard if you're going to try to plant trees or something on top of that wall. But anyway, you got to have the dead men when you're using the landscape timbers. Segmental walls. Many manufacturers now produce the segmental precast concrete units. They're similar in surface area to concrete block. These wall units come in a variety of forms, shapes, and even colors, and even different installation methods. We've got the pin wall units and the lip wall units. I would prefer the lipped wall. They're just a little bit easier to work with, in my opinion. The pin, you've got to stick those rods in it. And to be honest with you, I've only done one pin wall. We did it at Smith Mountain Lake for one of our clients that live down here, and they purchased a lake house up there. And we went in there and tore down a bunch of trees before they had the, the law that if you cut down a tree, you had to plant one back the same size. We went in there and cut down a bunch of trees and actually sodded it and gave them a nice view down to the lake and actually built them a pinned retaining wall that come out of their back patio. and it was actually underneath their deck too, so it was a nice home for them. But prices vary. It can be cost effective with the walls depending on what else you need to do. They're probably cheaper, a lot cheaper than actually doing a standard CMU with brick facing wall that you had to pour solid. But the wall units may be heavy, either 30 to 80 pounds per unit. I've dealt with all of those, but way less than timbers, and most workers can handle them. And then again, the pin walls, you got to have those metal rods, and then the lip walls use a protrusion on top or the bottom to integrate the layers. Dry laid stone or dried stack. This isn't a stacked wall. I mean, it is stacked, but I love the thin, actually stackable type where the rocks can only vary maybe 1 inch to 2 inches in thickness where we stack. We used to do a ton of that to actually outline people's shrub beds. It actually looked really, really good. But dry laid stone is considered a classic wall material. It is installed without mortar between the stones, which actually makes it look better. Considered highly aesthetic, and it is. Costs vary, but are typically high, and with stone being a workable material because most cut stone weights are within the worker's lifting abilities, and the stability may be a concern for high walls. Again, it is straight up decorative. I like it that it looks like you can actually sit on top of it, but the rocks are actually big enough and actually stacked in there pretty good, and there may even be some mortar on the back side of that. But again, not the type of material that you want to actually hold back an embankment for you. Gabions, an alternate to small single unit materials for retaining walls. The heavy duty rectangular wire baskets are placed in position and then filled with stone, and they're usually filling it with riprap. The size and weight make the walls stable. Varying the size and type of stone inside the gabion produces different aesthetic effects, but look, you got that wire basket, there's just not much you can do with it aesthetically. It's always going to be a distraction, but the cost is in the very low range of wall materials. And you see a lot of this up in the mountains. You see it on the roadways and things of that nature. But what's one way that we could actually kind of make that wall a little more attractive? Well, one thing would be to use vines. Let a vine grow up on it and put some vegetation and let it climb that wire. But again, a very inexpensive way to get yourself a retaining wall here. They serve their purpose. But planning for wall construction, ladies and gentlemen, we got to first identify the location of the front of the wall. ID the area with string-lined stakes or marking paint. Consider potential problems, whether it's unstable soil or excessive water. I've actually dug footers and hit streams and had water underneath walls. I mean, so you've got to make preparation for that. That changes an entire situation at hand. That is the time to bring in the engineers once you run into that. You need to ID the stairs and the corners and then check the slope and match to the wall height. Then we're going to excavate. Sod and topsoil should be removed 2 feet in front of and 2 feet behind the entire wall alignment. Excavate to a depth that is 8 inches lower than the desired finish along the base of the wall. So we're digging down a little bit deeper. And then remove any unstable materials encountered and replace with a granular base. And you would actually want to compact that granular base and actually get it smooth, get it flat, and get it compacted in the footers. So basically build your footers just like you're actually going to pour footers with concrete. Your base prep, wall construction begins at the lowest point of the wall. In the rough trench and along the wall alignment, excavate a trench to be filled with base material that is 6 inch deep and 12 inch wider than the wall material. Bottom of the trench should be level from end to end, and that's when you're going to have to get out your transit and actually make sure that it's level all the way across. When the depth of this trench level exceeds the thickness of the wall material, the wall should step up 1 level. Walls should never step up more than 1 course at a time. The course on the bottom should always be covered by grade in front of the wall. Now, I've seen walls that don't do that. Those are a disaster waiting to happen. And then fill the trench with 3/4 to 1 inch crushed stone, level and compact with the tamper. That is going to be your footings or your footers for your retaining wall. Wall failure can often be traced to buildup of water pressure behind the wall. Yes, almost 100% of the time. Release of the water from behind the wall is accomplished partly by weep holes and joints, and then supplemental drainage is recommended for walls that exceed 2 feet in height. You got to have that pipe behind it with either corrugated. Usually it's a corrugated that has the slits in it or actually has the perforations or the holes. So you got the perforated pipe with the holes that you're going to put gravel on top of it. And then you may have the slit corrugated pipe that's either going to be covered in some type of netting or almost like a pantyhose material to keep debris from getting down into the pipe. Wall heights and stabilization. As the wall height increases, so does the potential for failure. The stabilization methods includes leaning the wall backward with each course. That's called the batter. And when you stack your block and even your landscape timbers, they're almost probably about an inch back from the one that's below it, and it tapers it back. For higher walls, use materials such as dead men, geogrids, and anchors. These anchors on the right, a little tough doing that, but that geogrid there in the middle section and definitely your dead men will actually keep that wall stable and from tipping over. Terracing. Terracing is the construction of a series of short walls. It's very, very aesthetic, guys. This is what homeowners love. Just like with this picture there's nothing more attractive than that. I love that type stone, and I love the walls that height. Gives a great addition for some planting beds, and we can do a lot with that with our designs. But each step back is a calculated distance from the previous wall. Terracing should be constructed beginning with the lower wall first, then grading an area behind the wall and constructing the next higher wall. The grade between the walls should slope forward with a fall of 6 to 12 inches. Make sure you get that water off. And then spacing between the walls should be no less than twice the height of the taller wall. So there's your specs when you are terracing. Ending the walls without an abrupt stop requires some method of transitioning the grade. Methods used range from tapering the grade in front of a wall to stair-stepping to the top of the wall to meet the grade. Choosing the best method depends on whether the grade behind the wall is falling or moving upward behind the wall. Now, like I said, I love to turn my stone back. And we saw that one picture earlier in the slides where actually it was just a 90-degree turn back on a landscape timber wall. But if you're doing a modular block wall, you're actually able to kind of turn it back in and make it a smooth transition to go back into the embankment. Now, unit pavers or patio construction, brick pavers, concrete pavers, all of this is cool. Now, we're going to look at some styles first. We got run and bond. Pavers are placed in a staggered horizontal row. They end to end row 1, and then with end to end and offset by 1/2 paver for row 2. So you're splitting the two. It's running bond. Works with interlocking concrete pavers and bricks. You see more of this type if you're laying a sidewalk. It's probably the easiest to lay and probably the most common paver unit that you will see out there. Stacked bond, jack on jack. Pavers are placed side by side in even horizontal and vertical rows. Works best with interlocking concrete pavers, brick, and any modular paver. I just had a student that we did a nice landscape design this week for another instructor on campus, and she used stacked bond. I asked her why she did it. She gave me a pretty good, and when she told me the reason, I was like, wow, it makes sense now. So she'd been paying attention in class, but to be honest with you, I've totally forgotten about it. But jack bond, it's not my favorite, but it is very easy to do. Herringbone, old school, the fancy stuff right here. Places horizontal and vertical blocks in a diagonal pattern across the paved area. The finished pattern leaves a zigzag or herringbone appearance. Halves are required. You've got to cut them, and then works with any modular paver, including concrete and brick. But this is old school. You see it like at old tavern buildings, old downtown buildings. They will have this nice herringbone style. And then Basketweave, my favorite. I'm getting ready to do my patio over here at the house, and I am going to do it with Pine Hall brick pavers in a Basketweave pattern. I am going to use the brick that has a red brick, a light tan, and a dark chocolate brick. I love that pattern. We just did the vinyl over here at the house and did a light tan, so that's really going to pop it. And I'm going to do a trellis over top this brick paver patio. So I'm going to set out here every summer night, this coming up summer, and I'm going to be out there with my little fire pit drinking my Malbec. And so, but Basketweave places 2 pavers vertically, then 2 pavers horizontally, alternating the pattern repeated across an entire paved area. Works again with any modular paver, both brick and concrete. And then the whirling squares, very difficult to do, but actually cool looking. Again, I could see this in like some type of English cottage gardening or at a botanical gardening or arboretum. Walking down it with formal plantings on either side would really look cool. But this places 4 pavers in a square pattern around a half brick center. And halves are required, and still it works with any modular paver, both brick and concrete. Interlocking unit pavers, available in a variety of shapes that create patterns when installed in stacked or running bond. Kind of weird looking. I would say that this is the big box store brand. Probably would not do this for any residential client. Randomly regular, this is stone, uses irregular sized stone placed with small and large stone evenly intermixed. Requires artistic eye to develop an attractive pattern. Random fitted, uses irregular sized stone to create horizontal and vertical joints. The strong horizontal and vertical joint lines should appear, and as you can see, looking at this pattern right here, you see strong horizontal lines, and you can see some vertical depth with it as well, but the horizontal is the one that jumps out at you the most for this one. Modular irregular, uses stone of varying sizes with straight cut edges, typically in multiples of 2, 3, or 4 inches, so stone can be fit with horizontal and vertical joints. Again, kind of reminds me of big box designs or big box stores. Modular running bond with stone. Uses stone of the same size with straight cut edges. Stone is placed in staggered pattern, similar to that's found in brick installation. I love the cobblestone look, again, like a lot of downtowns will have. I remember we were up in Baltimore. We went back to when the GIE used to be back in Baltimore. I believe it was 99 or 98 the last time we went to Baltimore. We actually had a Christmas decor convention up there as well. Hung out with those cool guys, and we walked to where all the bars were in Baltimore, and it was nothing but cobblestone. It was beautiful. Absolutely loved it. And this stuff like this, man, you put a little moss in there, you've just got one heck of a nice pavement area here. And guys, woo! It is time for the quiz. You know, we're about 34 minutes into the lecture. We're going to talk about this plan here that I drew up. I want you to print it out within the course. It's going to be just underneath the lecture. You're going to be able to see the plan. I want you to print it out. The scale of this drawing is 1/4 inch. Now, I know sometimes when you scan in a document and you print it, it may be a little bit off. But it should be very, very close to quarter scale, enough for that you would be able to answer the questions. You will need an architect scale and a calculator. If you've got a construction calculator, that's even better. You know, if not, you can download one on your phones. And then I want you to answer the following questions that are on the next page. I need you to, well, you're not going to watch the video of me working the problems out. I think you guys are going to be able to do this A-okay. So let's go ahead and talk about these questions really, really quick. There is the plan drawn up. It's going to look like this, blown up. You're going to print it out. It's going to be on an 8.5 by 11. Here is the information. We're actually going to price it using the Versalock wall blocks. So I want you to know that the wall is 16 inches long. It is 6 inches tall, and it is 12 inches deep. Now, I want you to figure this wall without the cap. So we're going to leave the cap off. Don't worry about that. I want to just figure up how many blocks we're going to need. Yes, we would still cap it. So really all we would need for the cap is the length, and they're just 3/8 of an inch, a little bit shorter than these. So that's what we're just going to use the actual wall, just the blocks. We're not going to figure it for the caps. And here is a typical retaining wall section. You know, they've got 2 courses buried here. We're going to bury 2 courses for our project, and we will continue on. If you need to screenshot this and print it out, feel free to do so. But here are your hardscape calculations. How long is the retaining wall? That's question number 1. So measure it with your quarter scale. Number 2, if the footings are 2 foot wide and the specs call for a 6-inch gravel base, how many yards of stone do you need? Guys, hopefully this is a review for you guys, but just do the math. You got to figure the length of a retaining wall. It's 2 feet wide. We need a 6-inch gravel base. How many yards of stone do you need? 3, how many block do you need for a wall 6 feet high with 2 courses buried? Again, we're burying the 2 courses. So we still got to get a wall that's 6 feet high. Well, we got to figure out, remember, how many courses are going to be buried. There's going to be 2 courses. How tall are the wall? That's how we're going to figure out our height. 4, how many block do you need for a wall 9 foot high with 2 courses buried? Well, basically, we're just adding 6 more courses, right? Because it's going to take 2 courses to get a foot. How many square feet are in the concrete patio? How many square feet are in the brick paver patio? And then question 7, how many brick would be in the patio if there are 8.5 brick per square foot? And then 8, how many yards of concrete would you need for a 4-inch base under the brick pavers? Remember, I said I like to have concrete underneath my brick pavers. And then 10, how many yards of concrete would you need for the concrete patio if we poured it 4 inches thick? And then how many yards of concrete would you need for the concrete patio if we pour it 6 inches thick? So again, you've got the 10 questions that you're going to answer for this course. This is your quiz. The lecture's about 20 minutes shorter than usual. Usually I talk for anywhere from 55 to 65 minutes. But we've talked for right around 40 minutes. That's going to give you 20 minutes to calculate this. And once you upload your answers within the Moodle quiz, that will give you credit for doing the for the course, and you can download your proof of attendance. Now, here is the plan colored with colored pencils. I absolutely love doing landscape design. Guys, it took about 20 minutes to color this with some colored pencils, and it gets your point across with your homeowners. And so, guys, that will conclude the lecture part of Hardscape Calculations. Hope you've enjoyed the course. Go ahead and print out the plan. It's going to be in black and white. You'll print it out on 8.5 by 11, get that quarter scale and your calculator. And these questions are going to be in the Moodle quiz. And once you complete that, you will be good to go to download your proofs of attendance for this course. Again, the quiz is these questions that we saw. It's going to take you a little bit longer than the usual multiple choice questions that I give. Usually it takes roughly 2 minutes, 3 minutes to do the 10 questions after you watched an hour lecture. The reason this course is in a little bit shorter because it's going to give you time to answer those hardscape calculations. Guys, I appreciate it. It means a lot to me, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you.